Hello everyone, I welcome you back to another important lecture. And for today, we are going to look on toward another aspect of the reproduction that we have in the plants and that goes with the name of sexual reproduction. In this lecture, we would be simply focusing on to be understanding the structure of the flower, both in case of insect pollinated flowers and the wind pollinated flowers. At this point, it is important for us to be understanding is that unlike us, the human beings, where we have a male parent and the female parent, but in case of the plant, this is not the case. Rather than they have got the flowers in them, and those flowers would have the male part and it would have the female part. And these male and the female parts, what they would do, that with the help of the meiosis, they would make haploid cells, and these haploid cells are the gametes with us, and these gametes they would later fuse with one another, and as a result of that, we would make the zygote out of it. Now, since the sexual reproduction is revolving around the flower. So our idea and the concept of the flower structure and its functions should be very much clear. Now, if I were to take you to be understanding the parts of an insect pollinated flower, because the sexual reproduction happens in the insect and the wind pollinated flower, but the overall mechanism of the reproduction and the parts of these would be same with an exception for few. For the insect pollinated flower, what we have is that we have two major parts. We have the male part and we have the female part. The male part goes with the name of stamen. And here you see the word men is coming. So this is the male part of the flower. And if I were to talk about the female part, so this goes with the name of the carpel. The male part of the flower, stamen further has got two major components in it. One of that is anther, and then the second one is the filaments with us. In the anther, we would further have the pollen sacs, and in the pollen sacs, we will have the pollen grains, and the pollen grains would have the male nuclei in them, and this male nuclei would be made in the anther with the help of the meiosis process, where the parent cell would divide to make four daughter cells, and those four daughter cells would be made such that the number of the chromosomes would be reduced to half in them. And then, along with the anther, we have the filament with us. And the role of the filament is that it would hang or it would cause the anther to protrude outward. On the other way around, the female part, that overall we are referring to this as the carpel. So this has got the stigma in it, then we have the style in it, then there would be coming up of the ovary, and in the ovary we would have multiple ovules, and we will see in a while that we have got another opening there leading to the ovule having the female nuclei in it, and that would be the micropyle. The extra component that we see within the structure of the flowers, so they would be the sepals, and we would also have the petals in them. So if I were to be taking you to the diagram of this, so you see is that this is the petal with me, and for the insect pollinated flower, this would be brightly colored and they would be scented so that they can attract the insects for the pollination. And if you were to look here at the bottom, so here we have got some greenish kind of a structure here, and they are the sepals. So the idea is that when the flower is in the bud stage, so it requires a protection, and that protection is provided by the sepal that we have here. If I were to indicate the male part of the flower to what we were referring to this as the stamen, so here we have got the stamen with us, and in the stamen, this part that I am highlighting at the moment, so this is the filament, and here we have got the anther. And in the anther, further we would have the pollen sacs, we would have the pollen grains, and in the pollen grains, we would have the male nuclei. If you were to clearly see here, so this part that we have within the flower, so this is the female part. Overall, this part would be referred to as a carpel. And at the top, what we have is a sticky part here, and this is stigma. And then here we have got this tubulated structure that would connect the stigma to the ovaries that we have here. And this part of the carpel would be named as the style. If I were to go down, so here we have got the ovary with us. And in the ovary, what we have here, like they would be the ovule, and in the ovule we would have the female nuclei. The idea is that these ovules they are protected by the structures, and the name of that structure is integument. And if you can see an opening here, right here, so this opening goes with the name of micropyle. Moreover, in the insect pollinated flowers, since they have to attract the insect toward them, so not only they have got the brightly colored and scented petals, but at the same time there would be availability of some structures on the inside of them that once I'm indicating here. So they would be referred to as the nectaries. And the concern with the nectaries is that they would secrete a sweet substance in them or produce a sweet substance in them, and that is a nectar. And out of the greed, when the insects they would come to be feeding on toward the nectar, so they would help the insect pollinated flower in pollination. So if I were to take you to the table with context to the flower structure, so here you see is that I indicated above that we have the sepals and they protect the unopened flower when this is in the bud stage. If I were to moving to be discussing the petals, so they are brightly colored, usually in the insect pollinated flowers, and their concern is to be attracting the insects toward them. If we were to talk about the anther, so this is the part of the stamen. Not only it produces, but at the same time, this would release the pollen grains, and the pollen grains they have the haploid nucleus in them. As we had seen the filaments above, so they were providing the spore to the anther and were also causing them to hang out or protrude out so that their pollen grains can be carried either with the help of insect or with the help of the wind. As far as the stigma is to be bothered about, which was a part of the carpel, so this was the sticky top of the female part of the flower, and its role is to be receiving or collecting the pollen grains, leading to the fertilization process. And then we saw a tubulated structure that was tiled with us, and it was a tube that was connecting the stigma that I have shown you to the ovaries. And as far as this ovary is to be bothered about, so this has the structures ovules in them, and these ovules they have developed the haploid female nucleus in them. And if I were to be talking about the ovule, so they lie within the ovaries, and they have got the female gamete in them. And that female gamete, when it would fuse with the male nucleus that is available within the pollen grain, so that would result in the fertilization process. Now, since we have looked on toward the structures and the functions of the insect pollinated flowers, we must have an idea of the wind pollinated flower as well. So the diagram coming right now as of, so this is the diagram of the wind pollinated flower. Now what you have to be assuming here is that this thing right here that is indicated with the green color, so these are the petals of the wind pollinated flower, and unlike the insect pollinated flower, they are not brightly colored, they are dull. And if we were to look on their filaments, so their filaments are long, or we say they are pendulous, or they hang out of the flower. And here at the end of the filaments, what we have with us, this is the anther, and it would again have the pollen grains in it. If we were to go down, so here you see this feather-like kind of a structure that I am indicating as of now. So this would be stigma with us. And like the anther, this part of the carpel, which is the stigma, so this again is long and pendulous and feathery, and this also hangs out of the flower. And if you were to just look here, so here we have the ovaries of these flowers. From the paper point of view, the student they must be very much clear about differentiating between the insect pollinated and wind pollinated flowers. So let us just try to be talking from the very basic ones. The petals of the insect pollinated flowers, they are brightly colored, they are scented. For the wind pollinated flowers, they are dull and they are not centered. As far as the filaments of the insect pollinated flower is concerned, and their anther is to be bothered about, so they are short and they lie within the flower. For the wind pollinated one, you see their filaments and the anthers, they are long and pendulous and they would hang out of the flower. The stigmas of the insect pollinated flowers, again, they are short and they lie within the flower. For the wind pollinated ones, you see that their style and the stigmas, they are long. The style is long and pendulous, and the stigma again is feathery, and this hangs out of the flower. As far as their presence of the nectaries is concerned, that produces a nectar. So these insect pollinated flowers, they would have the nectaries in them, but the wind pollinated flowers that we have with us, so they would not have any of the nectar secreting glands in them. Moreover, we must be very much clear about that how come the production of the pollen grains can vary among them. So the insect pollinated flowers, they would produce the pollen grains in less quantity, but the pollen grains, they would be bigger in size, and they would also have these protrusions on them so that they can stick with the body of the insect. For the wind, the requirement is that their pollen grains have to be small and they also have to be light so that the wind can easily carry them away. Moving back to the table, to be just indicating whatsoever I have said verbally. So here this table enlists all those differences that we have in between the insect and the wind pollinated flowers. So you see as that in this table we have got this section for the insect pollinated and this is for the wind pollinated, and on toward this side we have got their features. If I were to talk about their petals, so the insect pollinated, they have large brightly colored petals to attract the insect. For the wind pollinated, they don't have any obligation of attracting the insects toward them, so their petals, they would be small and they would be dull in color as they rely on the wind for pollination, not to be attracting the insects. For the smell thing, the insect pollinated petals would be scented, they would have a sweet smell. For the wind pollinated petals, there would be no smell for their petals. As far as the nectar is concerned, so the insect pollinated flowers, they have them and it would produce a sweet secretion that goes with the name of the nectar with an intention to be attracting the insects toward them. For the wind pollinated, there is no production of the nectar within their nectaries. Now, since in case of the insect pollinated flower, since we have got something to be carrying the pollens from one flower to another flower, so the quantity of the pollen grain that is produced for the insect pollinated flower, so they are produced in less number. Why? Because the chance of wastage by the insect is less as compared to the wind. For the wind pollinated flower, they produce very huge quantities of the pollen grain because since they are relying on the wind, and you see that when the wind would be carrying the pollen grains away from one plant to another plant, from one flower to another flower, so the chance of pollen grains getting wasted is more. So when they would produce the pollen grains in more quantity, their pollination chance by the wind would be greatly enhanced. As far as the pollen shape or the pollen characteristics are to be bothered about, the insect pollinated flowers, they have got some sticky or spiky appearance with an intention to be adhering to or sticking to the body of the insects. For the wind pollinated ones, their pollen grains are light, they are dry, and they are smooth and they don't stick with one another, and it would make it easier for the wind to be carrying them away. For the position of the anther and the stigmas for the insect pollinated flower, they would be short and they would be lying inside the flower. So whenever an insect is coming toward them, so they should brush again their body so that the pollen grains can be carried away and at the same time they can be deposited onto the stigma of the flower. For the wind pollinated ones, their anthers, their filaments, and their stigmas, they are long and they are pendulous or they are loose and they hang out of the flower so that their exposure to the wind is greatly enhanced. As far as the stigma is structure is to be bothered about or shape is to be bothered about, So for the insect pollinated ones and for the wind pollinated one, both the stigmas they would be sticky. But for the insect pollinated, the stigma would not be feathery. But for the wind pollinated one, that would have a feather-like appearance or a net-like appearance so that they can catch any of the drifting pollen that is present in the wind. So I hope you would be very much clear with the structure of the flower and for both the wind and the insect pollinated flowers that we have got with us.